Do you know this feeling? You play, practice, 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 and you want to achieve something with your sound. But somehow these reeds it's always the same, yeah. A pack, 10 pieces, you buy a new one, you get excited. 8 don't work. 8 just don't work. 2 are kind of okay. Yeah, maybe one works well after 2 weeks, once it's broken in. Exactly. That's not just exhausting and annoying and frustrating, but also expensive, right? In the long run, it costs money. A box of saxophone reeds for alto sax now costs, I think, about 30 euros, 25 to 30 euros, depending on what you buy. Um, and it really doesn't have to be that way. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you 3 tips on how you can get a lot more out of your sound with just 3 small changes. Pay close attention. Tip number 1. Absolutely fundamental. How do you mount the reed onto the mouthpiece? You take your saxophone, your mouthpiece. It's probably best if you just use the neck for this. I've got everything attached here now, and that works too. And you probably learned that you line up the reed flush with the tip of the mouthpiece, right? So far, so good. But what you could also do is move the reed down just a little bit. That changes the sound in such a way that everything starts a bit more easily, and the reed seems a bit lighter. Yeah, it vibrates faster. Or you can move the reed up, which gives you a bit more resistance, so it feels like, or creates the illusion, that you're playing a stronger reed. With that, you can really vary a lot how your reed responds and how it works. Yeah. What most people don't know is that you can also move your reed to the right or left. Sometimes, when I look at student setups and the reed is sitting crooked like that, that's obviously a disaster. Nothing's going to work, or you shouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. But if you try it with small, adjustments, then it works, yeah. Try moving it to the left or right. Give it a shot. For me, it made a huge difference. Tip number 2, the position of the mouthpiece in your mouth. Yeah, that also sounds like something really basic. How far is your mouthpiece in your mouth? You probably learned at some point that the saxophone mouthpiece should be about a centimeter inside your mouth, right? Now, it really depends on what kind of sound you want to achieve. If you want to sound like Stan Getz, for example, and you want a lot of subtone in your sound, a special effect that basically kills the overtones of the sound and gives you a lot of fundamental tone and also a bit of air mixed in, then you should pull the mouthpiece out a bit more. If you want the sound to be bigger and more open, then you should push the mouthpiece in further, right? But if you push the mouthpiece in too far, this happens. The sound becomes hollow, and at some point it just breaks away. That's the typical beginner's mistake. When you play a saxophone for the first time, you don't really know how to do it yet. You put the mouthpiece way too far in, and then squeak. The note just squeaks away. So finding that position that's optimal is worth its weight in gold. As a rough guideline, that 1 centimeter is always pretty good. On the other hand, you can also place a finger on it and use the fingertip as a reference. Another tip would be, this is just a 20 euro bill here, but you take a piece of paper and push it in as far as it will go. So, without wiggling it too much or pushing it in too far. Then you make a little mark here, and okay, that's the position for my lips. And that way you know how far the mouthpiece goes into your mouth, right? Of course, you have to make sure you can see it. Maybe use a mirror. You could also, maybe at the beginning or when you're doing this, stick something small in there. I invite you to experiment with that yourself. Tip number 3 is extremely important and, of course, has to do with embouchure, right? The embouchure for the saxophone generally looks like this. You pull here and pull down here. Yeah. So once to the sides and once downward. And by doing that, we've activated some muscles. And at first, there's a basic tension there so that the air coming out of our body gets centered here, or rather, passes through a kind of valve. I always tell my little students it's like a faucet. If you turn it on and the valve isn't attached at the front, then PSSCH, the water just gushes out. But if the valve is attached, then the water comes out in a controlled way. And that's the job, that's the purpose of the embouchure. And how you shape this embouchure, within this framework, tensing and pulling down here, well, there are a few ways to do it. The more you use this embouchure, the more classical your tone becomes, warmer, softer, maybe broader, you could say. If you go in the other direction, then your tone, well, you might give your tone a bit more of your own character. Maybe a bit more air comes into your playing, some extra noises, depending on what you want. Yeah, and the tone also sounds a bit more centered, right? It's a matter of taste, really. Just depends on what you want, yeah? But if you experiment with this, you'll notice right away that every reed works differently. Basically, when you change your embouchure. So, when you change your lip tension. So, how can you practice this now? Hold long, long, long notes, yeah? And I mean that in every sense. So, hold long notes and don't just do this exercise for a minute, but maybe for 5 minutes. So, if you don't have much time to practice on a given day, I recommend at least doing this, or at least taking your mouthpiece, or at least with the neck, yeah? And hold long notes for a few minutes. Let them swell. Start softly and let them fade out again. What I'm doing with my breath right now, that's a little bonus tip. A breath. There are 2 ways to get air into this instrument. Option number 1, warm air. Yeah, if you blow into your hand, like in winter when it's really cold and you're warming your hands, you'll notice right away that it's warm. Or if you breathe onto a window, you can even see it, right? It condenses. What happens when I blow like that? I open up my throat back here, the back space here basically opens up and I get more size and, and more fullness, more volume there, yeah. And that's exactly what gets reflected in the sound, right? The sound is shaped similarly to how this area back here is positioned. The opposite would be number 2, fast, cold air. Yeah, that's what most people actually do when they think of a wind instrument, right? I try to blow air in there as quickly as possible so that the air stays steady, which makes perfect sense. Cold air, like blowing out a candle, then you'll get that feeling pretty quickly. And when you blow in like that, you'll also notice that the back of your throat isn't as open, right? It's much. Well, I wouldn't say closed, but it's definitely a bit tighter than when I'm just exhaling gently. There's a lot more focus, more centeredness. So, this cold air technique, for example, works really well when you're playing loud, fast passages. whereas warm air is more suited for softer passages. And so on, right? And practice these two different types of air on lung notes. That has a whole range of side effects, you know? You train your endurance, you train your embouchure, you train your ear, you listen, yeah? Music is all about listening. That's 90% of everything, even how you learn music, in my understanding. Um, and that way you cover a whole lot of things at once. I wish you lots of fun with it. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be happy if you subscribe to my channel and left me a little like. Uh, every week a new video with tips all about playing the saxophone and how you can make the best progress on your instrument.